Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. In this lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to cut, prepare, and sew our waistband onto the pencil skirt. You're not going to want to miss this lesson. That's what's happening today in the Atelier. The next thing that we need to do is get our waistband on, okay? Now, a bespoke waistband has literally 3 layers, okay? We have the outer waistband, all right, which is the cloth. We have the foundation, which is our band roll that I'm going to talk about here in a second. And then we have the inner cloth, okay? So what we're going to do today in this lesson is we're going to get all of that prepared and baste it onto the skirt, all right? The band roll that I use, and you can use different things as a foundation for your waistband. If you wanted to use the body canvas that we use in the jacket, you could definitely use that. But what I love about this band roll is it's nice and stiff, so but it does have a little give, so it's not like it's poking you in the ribs. And then the other thing I love about it is right here on the end, okay, it has this little area that gets sewn onto the skirt or the trousers. And it's exactly 1 centimeter. So it makes it really easy to basically just put this up against, the mark stitches and then sew it back. So it's really kind of fun and cool, which I love. Of course, we get this from the lining company. This is 4 centimeters in width. Okay, you can buy different widths. I think they have 6 centimeters if you wanted something a little bit wider for trousers, etc. Okay, so the very first thing that we need to do is we need to measure all the way around the waist of our skirt, okay? And remember, because our waistband, it needs to overlap a little bit. So we're gonna come past the zipper on the one side, a couple of centimeters, so we have some overlap, okay? So here what I'm doing is if you start here, you can see I'm lining my ruler up with my mark stitches, okay? This is really important because that is the actual waist and where we're going to be basting our waistband on, okay? So what we wanna do is just take our ruler here, okay? And we're just gonna start following our mark stitches all the way around the skirt, okay? To measure exactly how much band roll and cloth, etc., that we need, okay? So you just go round and round with your tape measure, making sure you hold everything nice and straight, it's not wrinkled up, okay? So if I measure my skirt zipper to zipper, I'm at 76 centimeters, okay? So, but what I want to do, as I mentioned, is I do want to have a little bit of overlap. If you look here, you don't want your waistband to just stop at the zipper or you'll have a big gap, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over a few more centimeters and probably bring it over about, I think 3 centimeters over from the zipper would be great. In fact, if I'm at 76, I think what I'm going to do is just do an even 80 centimeters just to make it easy. If I want to cut some off, I can, all right? So I'm just going to write down here on my table 80, and that's for the band roll, okay? So let's put that aside for a moment, okay? So we can get that out of the way. All right. Now, what you have to think about when we go to cut the cloth for the waistband, okay, we need to make sure that we're leaving enough cloth on either end of the band, right? Because if we just stop it right here, we're going to have a raw edge. So what we want to do is we want to give ourselves a couple extra centimeters on either end. We can always trim back if we have too much to overlap at the end, each end of the waistband. So if I'm looking at 80 centimeters for the actual band roll itself, okay, I think what I'm going to do to play it safe is I'm going to cut my cloth and I'm going to make it 84 centimeters. That way it's going to give me a couple extra centimeters on either end of the band roll to overlap, okay? So we need one strip of 80 centimeters here. And you know what? 1 second. I just left my other scissors that I need to use to cut this, okay? So let's do this. Let's get all of these distractions out of the way for the moment so we can just focus on cutting this stuff one at a time, right? So here we said we needed 80 centimeters. So we'll take our nice waistband here and there we go. And we're just going to go ahead and snip that right at 80, okay? Right at 80 centimeters. Perfect. So we'll trim that right through. These scissors are an older pair of scissors of mine, so I'm not going to cut my band roll because this is stiff. I'm not going to use my good scissors to do that, okay? You don't want to use your good scissors, so cut it as straight as you can. Okay, so we have that. That's perfect. All right, and we can put this aside and out of the way, all right? So that's the easy part. Now we have this cloth here that we saved. Remember, we saved it and we wrote waistband on it, right? So there's the waistband. Now, here's what you have to think about. We said that we wanted to make each piece, the inner and outer part of the waistband, 84 centimeters long, okay? We also have to think about how wide we want it, because if you measure this band roll, okay, this band roll is actually 5 centimeters, just shy of 5 centimeters wide, all right? Now, we have to have enough to tuck up over the top of the band roll, all right? And we have to have enough at the bottom so that when we go to sew it, it's all part of the waistband, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 strips of this cloth, okay, at 84 by 6 centimeters, and that will give me plenty to tuck over the top and have enough at the bottom as well, okay? That'll give me a little more, just a tiny bit more than a centimeter extra, okay? So here, what we're going to do, let's get rid of some of this, what I like to call zha-zha here. Let's get all that out of the way so it's not upsetting us. Not upsetting me. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is if you think about how we're cutting this, okay, I'm cutting this down across grain, okay, across grain, all right? So we cut everything this way when we cut the skirt. Now we're going to cut the waistband in the opposite direction, all right? So here, if I measure back, let me get this centered so you can see exactly what I'm doing here, okay? So I have everything kind of spread out. So I'm not going to include the selvage. I don't want that, so we're going to leave that out, okay? But I'm going to measure back here 6 centimeters, and I'm just going to make a nice line with my chalk every so often. And again, if I measure, my ruler is 50 centimeters, okay? So that's 50, and I need another 34 to give me 84 centimeters, right? So there's that right there. So there's my 84 centimeters. And if I come every 6 centimeters here, just come out 6, 6, 6, 6, and we can attach it all right, like so. Very nice. Okay, and then we'll have a nice line here that we can connect all the way down. Okay, all the way down. And that'll be perfect. That'll work out just fine. That'll give us the 6, okay? And what's really nice is from that line, I can measure back another 6 centimeters. And this little piece that I have here will be perfect. It'll give me exactly what I need in this one big strip. So that's lovely, okay? I can do it again. And that way I'm using my cloth very efficiently, right? Very efficiently. All right. Down here. Okay. And there we go. All right. So this makes it very easy. I'm just going to trim it off here at the selvage. Okay. And to make my life even easier, just going to get that out of the way. And then I can cut this right down the center here. To give myself both my inner and outer waistband. It's going to work out just perfect. It's a very long piece. Okay? And then here, we'll get off this excess. And we can get all that out of the way. Okay, so there's that piece. And now we'll have this piece. And that will be perfect. I'll just cut this excess off right here. Ay, ay, ay. These little pieces can be, they can be a little challenging to work with because you don't have the weight of the cloth to hold things down nicely. There we go. All right, we don't need that. Okay, so you see now if we take our band, our waistband, and we lay it here, you can see we now have enough to overlap like so, okay, which we're going to do here in a minute. I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's get the baby and bring that back over here. Okay, so what we want to do, okay, is because you're just starting out, right? It's really easy easier if you give yourself a 1 centimeter guideline, okay, at the top here. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to baste a nice, we're going to do a nice 1 centimeter guideline baste here that will help you in folding back the edge of your waistband, okay, or the cloth, if you will, all right, over the top of the actual band roll, okay, because we want this to hold on really nicely, okay? We want this to stay on real nice. So here, grab a little needle and some thread, and see here I've got my 1 centimeter guideline, all right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna baste that. So I'm gonna leave about a 1/2 centimeter in between my stitch length, okay? So I'm tacking it off here. And my stitches can be maybe like, I would say no more than 2 centimeters long, okay? You want these stitches to be relatively small because these stitches are, if they're too wide, they really kind of defeat the purpose of having you turn this edge back. So really what we're doing here is no different than what we did when we were basting up the length on our skirt, right? We had the guideline from our mark stitches, and we basted that so that it would help us turn up the length and also keep, excuse me, the lining in place, right? It would hold the lining in place. So that's what we're doing here, just to help us get a nice clean edge when we go to turn this back, okay? So you get here, and it's much easier if you pick this up in your hand and do a running baste. Of course, we want to make sure that this isn't tight, so we'll, at the end, we'll come in and fix that, yeah? So, pretty straightforward so far. Pretty straightforward so far. All right, and here we're just about at the end. And so now before I tack this off, what I want to do is I just want to make sure that this is not tight, okay? So just like everything else, we come down here at the very beginning and push all the tightness out, because there is quite a bit. So that's really important. We don't want all that tightness locked into the waistband, okay? And so we have that, all right? We've got that all set. All right, so now what we need to do, okay, is we need to baste the actual cloth onto the band roll. Now, what's really important, if you think about this, okay, when you look at your band roll, this is folding. If you look, this is the inside of the band roll. You see where this edge is here? And you can see the stitches. That's the inside of the band roll, all right? And that's really important because when we go to line this up, okay, we're gonna line this up on our skirt like this. Let me show you, all right? So we're gonna line it up on the skirt like this, okay? And so it's gonna sit right along the mark stitches. So once it's basted in and sewn, okay, then it's gonna fold up and look like that. Okay, so we have to make sure that we're putting the cloth, this is the outside of the waistband cloth, okay? So we want to make sure that we're actually putting it on the outside, which means that this little guideline, he should be folding in very easily, i.e. the inside of the band roll is this rough edge. That rough edge should be on the inside, not the outside, okay? Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to position our band roll here properly, And we said that we were giving ourselves an extra 2 centimeters on either end, right? So I'm going to mark that with my chalk. And this is exactly where I'm going to line up my band roll, okay? Just like that. Just like that. All right. Now, the other thing you have to think about, we've got 2 choices here, all right? If we wanted to put together the waistband, all right, in the most traditional sense, all right, what we would do is we would actually baste this to the skirt and backstitch it, okay? Now, we don't have to backstitch it by hand necessarily. You can actually do it on the machine as well. So it depends on how much time you have, how much effort you want to put into it, and how bespoke you want your skirt to be, okay? I'm going to show you how to do it both ways so that you can make your own mind up on how you'd like to prepare your skirt, all right? So the very first thing that I want to do is I want to baste my band. Let's do this. I want to baste my band roll on along the bottom here. Okay, so if you can see what I'm doing, I'm lining the band roll up along my stitches that I just put in here, okay? And I'm going to be basting in this softer area, in this 1 centimeter that turns up. That's where I'm going to be basting. However, I'm not going to baste right on that line, okay? Because that's where I have to sew. So like anything else, we're just going to come back off of that 1 centimeter slightly as we baste, okay? Now again, it's important that these basting stitches are relatively small because we want this to hold the waistband and the cloth in place when we go to turn the edge over here in a moment, all right? So again, this is baste, baste, baste. So I'll come in here and come slightly off. Here, if you can see, get a little blue chalk here. All right, if you can see right here, this little blue chalk line is where the hard part or the thicker part of my waistband roll is, okay? So that's where I would be sewing, right on that blue chalk. So I'm going to come off of that just very slightly here and baste this on this way, okay? Just very slightly. Again, I'm lining up my band roll with my guideline that I just basted in as well. So we have to make sure that we're keeping this positioned nicely as we baste it on, okay? And you know, as you can see, I have a little bit extra here at the bottom. So I'm not worried about that. If I have to trim a little bit off at the bottom here, I can do that. I want to make sure that I'm lining this up at the top properly. That's the most important thing, okay? So here, we're just going to go through and baste these 2 pieces together very nicely. Now again, my stitches aren't super duper tiny. I mean, they're like 2 centimeters long and maybe a ½ centimeter or a little bit more in between. That's fine. You know, the band roll is kind of thick, and so it's sometimes not as easy to get a small stitch in between. Okay? So again, just make sure as you're going through and doing this that you're keeping those basting stitches right along the top of the band roll. Okay? Not too tough. Okay? So it sometimes needs a little fandangling, but it's not too hard. I'm working on the baby just to elevate this up so I can see what I'm doing. But if you want, you should be working on the board or flat, because trying to hold this in your hands and keep everything where it belongs can be a little challenging. So as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm positioning my mark stitches, or excuse me, my basting stitches here along the top, okay? And then putting my hand, my non-working hand, down to hold it in place, and then doing a few bastes here like so. That's the easiest way to do it. And again, if you have a little extra like I do here, don't worry. We're going to trim that off. That's easy to do right before we go to sew on the band onto the skirt, okay? Super easy. Super duper easy. So don't try to get too far ahead of yourself, you know, because you're not going to get the waistband to sit nice all at once. You have to kind of go in and line it up a little bit here and there. You see, just like that. And then we're almost here to the very end, which is perfect. Of course, aha. Sometimes it can be a little difficult. Okay, there. And again, we don't want this to be tight. So before we tack this off, okay, let's come in and do what we always do and get out that extra tightness because it's in there. You can see the cloth ravel up as I go to push all that out. So it's real important we get that tightness out, okay? And now we can tack it. So that's good. So that's all ready. And that's being held on nicely. Okay? Now let's take a moment and I'll just trim off some of this excess to get it out of the way because I really want, I want to be able to line the actual band roll up with the skirt, yeah? With the waistline. And so if I have that extra cloth in the way, it's going to keep me from doing that. So we're just going to come in and trim this extra off. It's not that big of a deal. Be nice if we got it laser perfect the first time, but that doesn't always work out. Let me just trim it. Just trim it off a little bit. All right, so there's that. Okay, so that's perfect. And now the only one little thing I want to do here is I just want to make sure that my actual band roll is nice and straight. And I've got a couple little pieces here that are just kind of jagged. So I just want to straighten that out so that when I go to fold it back, I have a nice, when I go to fold it back like this, I've got a nice sharp edge, okay? All right, so we have all that. That's wonderful. Now, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fold back here. All right, we're going to fold back where we put this really beautiful line. What we don't want to do, okay, when we're folding back this edge, we don't want to pull it too tight, because if you do, what's going to happen, okay, is you're going to pull the cloth too much and it's going to pull the whole waistband. So what we want to do is we just want to turn it over that edge very gently and then baste it down. If you see it start to pull, then just take it back a little bit, and there all you'll need to do is just bring it over the edge very lightly, okay? So let me get a little bit more thread, and what we're going to do is then baste this edge down, and then we're going to be ready to actually machine or backstitch this onto the skirt. So we get a little bit more thread here. Okay. All right. And we're just going to start at the very end. We're going to fold that over like so. Okay. And just very slightly, just very gently fold that over the edge of the band. So I'm not pulling it, just very slightly. You can see with my finger, I'm just very gently pushing that edge down. It's really important. You might be like, oh God, Mar, why do we have to baste that line in? Well, it's really important because we don't want, we can't always trust our hands to exert the same amount of pressure, right, as we're folding that edge over. So it's really helpful to have that guideline there to help keep things exactly where they should be, okay? And, just like I did when I was turning up the length, okay, I'm coming down off the edge of my band roll here about a 1/2 centimeter, all right? So I'm basting pretty close to the edge to keep things held down nicely, okay? All right. Okay, so there's that. And this is just going to baste, baste, baste all the way down. Okay. My stitches are approximately 2 centimeters long. Okay. And I've got maybe, it's really hard to get a 1/2 centimeter in between each stitch. So I'm just doing my best to keep it small. I don't want like big gaps in between each stitch is what I'm saying. Okay. All right. It's a long 80 centimeters. I know. It's not the most exciting thing in the world to sit here and watch me baste, is it? Well, but it's necessary. It's necessary. That's what forward fasting the video is for, right? I know. Listen, I try to make it as exciting as I can. But basting is basting. It's only so exciting. And, it's because this is so thick, it's a little tougher to baste through. So you have to take your time. Because it's not as easy as just working with cloth. Unfortunately. All right. So you can see we've got a little waistband actually coming to light here, yes? It's starting to look like something. Now you might be thinking, hey Marlene, why is it that we make this in two separate pieces? Why don't we just do one piece? Well, we could, but I think having two pieces gives us a nicer finish on the inside, because the other piece that we're going to put in is actually going to be covering up the raw edge of our waist inlay and covering up all of the lining and so forth, the rough edge of that lining, and just giving us a really clean look on the inside of our skirt, which is why we do it this way. So, and just gives us a cleaner finish as well. Just a nice clean finish. You don't have any twisting of the waistband because you've got it basted down so nicely, both pieces. You might not have that same effect if you were trying to do it in one piece. So, all right. So we're here at the end. And once again, let me give this one more baste here. And once again, let's get all that tightness out. Okay. So that we're sure it sits real nice. Okay. And I'll just tack this off here. All right. Very good. Okay, or maybe not. Maybe not. We'll just, that's the end of that. All right, so we've got the outer waistband, the inner waistband, and the actual band roll cut. We've got the outer waistband now basted in preparation for putting this into the skirt, okay? And what I'm gonna do here really quick is I'm just gonna give this a real quick press just to have everything lay really nice and flat. And then when we come back, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to baste and sew the waistband in, okay? So just really quick, let's give this a quick press, just so it's nice and flat, okay? Because this will be the last time we won't be able to really press it as well, okay? When it's in the skirt. It's much easier to press it now. Get it nice and flat. You know how I like things nice and flat and tight? All this stuff seems to accumulate all around me. It's all right. We're working hard. We're hard working. We're tailoring. All right. Okay, wonderful. All right, so you can see we've got a nice flat, look at that, that looks really nice. really sharp, right? And crisp and clean. So like I said, when we come back, I'm going to show you how to baste this into the skirt, and then I'll show you two methods, either back stitching by hand or we'll do it on this machine. I'll show you how to do both. Okay, great. So we are back, and we're going to get this little waistband basted onto our skirt. Okay. Now, if you'd like to make your life easy, if you want to come in and you want to draw a chalk a guideline all the way around your skirt and connect all of your mark stitches, you can do that, okay? If that's what you'd like to do to help you in getting this waistband in nice and precisely, okay? You can do that. I feel like when you first start, that's really nice to help you kind of like train your eye. Once you've, put a waistband in a couple hundred times, couple dozen times, you might not feel like you need to do that, all right? So I'm just showing you if that's what you'd like to do. Just grab your ruler and your chalk and just connect all of your mark stitches so you have a nice, beautiful, clean chalk line, and that shows you exactly where your waistline is, okay? So that's number one, if that's what you'd like to do. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here on the left side of my skirt, and if you can see, what I'm doing is I'm taking the edge of my band roll and I'm butting it right up against my mark stitches, which represent my waistline, okay? And I'm going to baste, again, I'm not going to baste right on my blue line here where I showed you my blue chalk line. That's where we're going to be sewing, all right? We're going to either be back stitching or machining that. So I don't want to get in the way of my machine stitches, all right? So I'm going to just baste right off of that, almost close to where my other basting stitches are, okay? Now in this particular instance, you're going to have to hold this in your hand so that you don't baste through areas of the skirt that you don't want to, right? Because I'm just going through one big layer here, right? So again, we're going to hold the edge of the waistband right up against the mark stitches at the waist, okay? And baste that in, like so. Now, this baste does not have to be as small as the other bastes, okay? This baste can be much bigger if you'd like, much bigger, because we're only holding this in to machine it. Now, we don't want it to be like, 10 centimeters long. 3 or 4 centimeters is a fine stitch, okay? 3 or 4 centimeters wide is big enough, all right? Just enough to hold it in place as we backstitch or machine, okay? As we backstitch or machine. Get all that basted in. It doesn't even have to look pretty, because it doesn't have to be straight and even and beautiful. It just has to be, your waistband has to be butted up against those mark stitches. That's all. So here we're going to go around a curve here a little bit. Okay. All right. The other thing that you want to make sure of as you're doing this is you don't want to be pulling the waistband really tight. Again, you just want to lay it on top of the skirt and butt it up against the mark stitches. You don't want to be pulling the waistband, in other words, because if you do that, you're going to cause unnecessary ease, and your waistband will look wrinkly at the waistline, and you don't want that. Okay, so I'm just laying it right on top of the mark stitches, and I'm not pulling it, just letting it lay there. Okay? Just basting it in real nice. So line it up. Take 3 or 4 stitches around. Line it up, 3 or 4 stitches around, etc., etc. Wash, rinse, repeat, as they say. Okay? Wash, rinse, repeat. All right. We've really come a long way with this little skirt, haven't we? I'm so happy. It's really turning out well. And it's been fun to work on. It's been fun to work on with you. If this is your first sewing project, you've got to be very excited. And I'm sure you've done a tremendously fantastic job. I have no doubt about it. And it's hopefully just the first of many garments that you'll be making. The first of many. Right? There'll be no stopping you. You'll be unstoppable. All right. Okay, so we're just about around here. Round, around, around. Perfect. Couple more stitches, just keep this lined up nicely. All right. Very good. Very good. Come here, you. Trying to finish this out so you can see what I'm doing, and it's being very uncooperative. All right. Very good. Again, I'll also reiterate, this is why it was really important for us to get that zipper in properly, right? Oops. You know what? I didn't get all my... Let's get out that... Let's get out all the... Oh, it's a little harder to do it, but we do want to get out any tightness, okay? Just get that out. Very good. Okay. It's really important that when we put our zipper in, we did it properly. And if you look, here's the reason why. If we zip that up, right, what we want, of course, we're not finished here yet, but we do want our waistband to meet itself here perfectly. So when we're finished backstitching this or machining it, we'll be able to look and see. And like I said, if we put our zipper in properly, there should be absolutely no problem with the waistband meeting in the back by the zipper perfectly. All right? That should be a no-brainer at this point. Okay, so now let's say you're like, Marlene, I want to go pure bespoke on this, okay? One thing, if you want to if you want to backstitch your waistband in, all right, what I would recommend you use is your hand silk, okay? Now I have some black hand silk here, and what we want to do is we want to use a smaller needle. You don't want a teeny weeny needle, but you certainly don't want a basting needle either. So I'm going to use one of my John James Sharpie 9s, which is going to be smaller than the basting needle, and allow me, if I can see there we go, allow me to work very efficiently in backstitching this waistband on, okay? Now, whenever you're using, and you'll be using some more hand silk to do the finishing on this as well, okay? But what you want to do is you want to press this off, because the hand silk does have wax on the outside of it to protect the actual thread, okay? So before using it, we have to come in and press some of that wax off, which is why, like I've said many times, my baby looks like he does. He's had a lot of wax pressed off on him, okay? All right. Okay, so now we're going to come in and we're going to start backstitching this on. And just open that up, get that out of the way. Okay, so let's see if we can hold it this way. There we go. So what we would do in this case, if you're going to backstitch this, you're going to do a full backstitch, okay? Which means that you're going to come back to the stitch that you left off with, okay, and come forward. And again, if you are not sure of how to do your backstitch, go back to your hand stitches class and take a look at how to do a full backstitch, because it's really important. And here, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see from my camera angle, okay, if you're going to be able to see this backstitch perfectly. Probably not. So go ahead and take a look. Now what I will tell you, I'm just going to tack this a couple of times to hold it in place. Okay. What I'm doing is I'm holding, goodness gracious, I'm holding this with the raw edge away from me, okay? And I'm just backstitching this right underneath. You can see where my blue line is, okay? So that's exactly where I'm going to either be backstitching or machining, is right underneath that hard edge of the band. So here, and I would say my backstitch is probably, I'm keeping it pretty small. I would say anything under 1 centimeter would be the way you'd want to go. 1/2 centimeter would be ideal, okay? If you go much bigger than that, you're going to have a problem with the skirt staying, the waistband, you'll see the stitches, okay? It'll pull and it won't stay on. So I think your best bet is to stick with about 1/2 centimeter in length, okay? Full backstitch, 1/2 centimeter is what's going to do it, all right? 5 millimeters. 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters, so 1/2 centimeter, okay? 5 millimeters. And it's just that simple. We're just going to use that hard edge of the band roll as a guideline, and we're going to backstitch, 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 okay? Now, if you want to machine this, it's not going to be any different. You're going to use the width of the band as your guide on the machine, all right? So I'm just going to do a few more stitches here and then show you up close what that looks like. And then we'll get on the machine and I'll show you how to finish off the rest. Okay? So a few more here. I'll just work up to my side seam and finish it off. Okay? And then I'll get a good close-up picture with the camera so you can see it. All right, so I'm just going to tack this here a couple of times just to make sure. Okay? And then we can, off that goes. All right? Put that over here. Okay, so now if you look, you can see I have a full back stitch there. All right? Hopefully I'm holding that at the camera so it can see it clearly. Okay, so here's my full back stitch. And if you look on the other side, it's a little easier to see on the other side what the stitches look like as well. Okay, so that would be your back stitch if you want to go about doing it that way. I actually, you know me, I'm not a big machine person, so I really enjoy doing and back stitching the whole thing, but I want you to see both ways of doing it so that you can make up your own mind on how you'd like to do it, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna zippity-doo-dah over to the machine, and I'm gonna show you how to machine the rest of this band on, okay, waistband on, and then we'll take it from there. All right, I'll be right back. All right, so here I am at the machine, and just so that you can see, because this is white on white and it's kind of hard to see, but what I've got is my little handy dandy piece of blue chalk here, okay? And I'm just going to chalk a little bit of a blue line so that you can see exactly where this little lip starts. That's going to be my guideline right there, okay? Can you see that on both cameras here? Let me bring it over here so you can see it as well. This is going to be the guideline that I'm using on my machine, okay? So what we're going to do is line this up, and literally, if I line the edge of my presser foot up against where I've chalked that blue line, that's exactly where I need to sew, okay? Now, of course, I don't want to get caught up in my zipper and mess up my needles, so be careful there. I want to also make sure I'm right on my mark stitch. There we go. Sometimes things get a little shuffled around. All right, so here we are. All right, so my machine is set on 2.5, okay? And I also want to make sure that I know where the rest of the skirt is underneath, so we're not sewing the skirt to itself, okay? So be very careful there, because we're going around in a big circle, so sometimes that can be a little challenging, all right? So here I'm just going to come forward a couple of stitches, and then I'll come back a couple stitches, and then all I need to do is keep my presser foot aligned with the edge of my band there, okay? And again, make sure everything underneath is nice and smooth. Sometimes, you know, your lining can get kind of overlap itself, so just be aware of what's happening underneath at all times, okay? All right. And I'm just going to take it in small bites, go round and round, okay? Round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows. All right. Okay, just a little bit more until we meet up with my back stitch there, okay? And now we can just do a little, finish it off like so. All right, so that works nice. Okay, So that's all we need to do in terms of sewing that beautiful band on. That looks lovely. I think everything should hold up beautifully there. All right, and so you can see, hopefully, that nice stitch there that we've done all along. All right, and now what we'll do is we'll go back over to the board and we'll take out our basting stitches and press this up real nice, okay? So hold on, we'll be right back to get that done. We've got our beautiful waistband all sewn on now, and what we need to do is just take out all of these basting stitches and get them out of here, right? This is always the part where I try to look cool and it never really works out well for me. So today we'll just focus on trying to get these out without looking cool, okay? Because I won't. These are a little harder to just pull because the waistband itself is so thick. It makes it really hard to just pull this stuff out. So you have to kind of just take it slow here. Just a little bit at a time, and it all comes out very nicely. Okay? At least you hope. You hope so. You hope so, you hope so. Okay. See there, there. There's a little bit left here. The other basting stitch we can take out is the basting stitch that we put in to hold the lining here at the top. You can take that out now. We don't need it anymore. The waistband is going to hold that lining in very nicely for us, so we can get that out of the way. All right, so just get that out. Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to press the waistband up, right? Because we sewed it down, so we want to press it up like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into the inside, okay? And we're just going to take it a little bit at a time. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my press cloth because I do have to use a tiny bit of water, but as I've told you, my lining will stain with water. So if I just use a little tiny bit here, hopefully I can get away without causing a lot of tumult on the inside of my skirt, okay? So all we're doing is we're turning the waistband up, okay? And then we're pressing the inlay up, just like anything else. Just like we press the inlay up on the side seams, we're doing the same thing here. And you just want to take, of course, because we've got a lot going on the inside here, right? And it's a circle. We have to just take a small bite at a time, okay? Just a little bite at a time, just to open that up. Oh my gosh. We have like almost nothing left to do on this. We're going to put our inner waistband on, the inner cloth for the waistband on, and then it's just finishing. And that's where we get to do a little bit more handwork, which I love. I'm going to show you how to do what's called a fell stitch. That was a hand stitch class. You've learned that stitch in your hand stitching class. So we're going to be doing a little fell stitching all around the waistband. We have to put a little clasp on, right? Yeah. We need to give our skirt a final press so it looks all beautiful, right? Nice final press. Very easy to do. We always do a final press. It's like, that's when you know you're done. The final, right? That's when the skirt all comes together and looks so beautiful. I love it. Okay? But we have a few more steps, and we have a little bit more time to enjoy being with one another, which is wonderful. All right. So all we're doing is like opening up a seam here with this, just like anything else, we're opening up a seam, okay? So let's take a look on the outside and make sure we did a good job. Oh, yes. Looks like we did a beautiful job. That looks lovely. This is why we do a final press, because we'll put a wrinkle in here and there. But that waistband looks beautiful. That really came out nice, I think. So what we need to do now is work on the inside. So that was a lot to do. But when we come back, I'm going to show you how to take the inner waistband, prepare that, and get it basted in. And then, like I said, we start finishing, which is lovely. Thank you for joining me in the atelier today. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. And leave any thoughts or questions in the comments section below. I love hearing from you, and I answer every single one. In my next lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to prepare the inner waistband for finishing. You're not going to want to miss that lesson. That's what's happening next time in the atelier.